laughing at yourself. And when we asked people to reveal the truth about disability, there was plenty of humour.
But we talked about some of the tough topics as well. Today's program is a result of some frank and revealing conversations.
My life's dull. I have no fun at all.
Yeah, fun. Depends what you mean by fun, really.
Here we go!
That's right. Have I got it? I think it's other people's idea, though. Other people think, oh, life can't be as much fun like now that, or just for people with disabilities in general, people look and think, oh God, you can't be having much fun.
There is no burden about being disabled. It's living your life. And okay, I've got to live it differently. I can't, you know, fall down on the floor and play and roll with my dog or whatever, but I can sit in my chair and have my nephews on my lap and I can hug them and hold them. I can still be who I am. I just do it sitting down.
But all I can say is I'm never ever having a relationship again with someone who can't drive. Given that I can't drive, that was a disaster. Honestly, it's the first criteria. It's like, so do you drive? And then do you have a car, actually?
I do love my car and it goes pretty quick, so I do kind of, I guess it's my way of, I guess I'm on an even keel then, aren't I, with everybody else. I got checked out the other day by this guy in the car. And I was like, he has no idea that I'm in a wheelchair. And it was kind of weird that that was my first thought.
When you live in Auckland, I mean, I happily walk everywhere. Kate and I both walk. But there are times.
Great ass. And you're resentful, though. When I'm walking, I'm really resentful. I may have a great ass. I may write songs. I may get fit. I may meditate when I'm walking. But you're still resentful at the end of the day. It's like, this is actually, no, I would like some kind of transportation.
Nice man to pick you up.
Eh?
I've looked at some cars that I might be able to use, but I need to have a car that I can like drive into because I'm not strong enough to lift up my chair.
The one thing that I think people need to learn is that when I'm getting out of my car, like if I'm at the supermarket or something like that, I don't need any help. It's cool, I got it, you know. This is probably the 10th time I've got in and out of my car that day, and you know, I know how to do it.
People think that we can't live independently as a deaf person, that I can't drive, that I can't speak, and other things like that, which I actually can do.
Once I lose the ability to drive, it's going to be a lot harder for me because driving gets me to where I want to go. It gives me an escape. It gets me to places, so it has both effects. You know, it carries me to something I want to do, or it carries me away when I want to get away.
I want to go out, I sort of have to go taxis, buses, parents, friends. Friends are a big one. They sort of come pick you up. So a lot of the independence is sort of lost.
When you've got a disability, you know, it's hard to get around, and I guess, but when someone pushes you, it's like they're insisting you on doing something without you, I guess, allowing it, but they're taking away like your control of what you can do.
I didn't used to drive. I had my first job about 16 and I was working for CCS at the time. So there was a lot of other colleagues and friends there with disabilities and it was all lovely. And they used to call me Princess. So I'd get to work and they're like, oh, Princess is here. Hello, Princess. And I was like, hello. And I thought it was all my shoes because I had beautiful shoes back then. And then my girlfriend, I'm still friends with her 10 years on, and I said, oh, that was nice. You used to call me Princess at CCS. And she said, no, dear, it wasn't. It was quite an insult. And I said, oh, I thought I had lovely shoes. And she goes, oh, you did have lovely shoes. She said, but it's because how you used to be taken care of so much and you had no independence. And I said, oh, I had independence. She said, no, you used to get driven to work. Then Molly's dad would get out the wheelchair, he'd put it together, he'd lift you into it, push you up the ramp, take you all the way to your desk, and then come back for you at 5 o'clock. You couldn't even self-transfer or push up a hill or get your chair together. You didn't know how it came apart.
Roast
What do you
veggies.
Like, what do you like at peeling?
I'm interesting. Never really done peeling much before.
Never tried it? All right, we'll do it then.
Being self-independent really means a lot to me, because like I want to learn how to do stuff for myself. I don't want people to help me. I want to walk the stairs by myself. I want to push the hills by myself. I want to cook, clean, do everything for myself.
I was in the supermarket the other day and this lady came up to me and said, wow, look at you, all by yourself and doing your grocery shopping. And I wanted to say to her, yes, well, I am 28.
We'd go up to the shop and the shopkeeper would go to Dad, what does she want? And he's like, well, ask her.
For some reason, they always put the organic stuff on the
At the
high
top,
shelves.
yeah.
I don't know why they do that.
One day I was by myself and I didn't want to ask someone to pass something down. It was a feminine product. So I went to the next aisle and got a broom, and normally I could flick things down and grab just one. I flicked it, the whole shelf came down, and then people just cracked up laughing. But it wasn't in a nasty way. It was like, oh shit, I'm glad that wasn't me sitting in a sea of tampons. So, you know, it can bring a laugh too. It can bring a funny side.
I went to the car and this man came up to me and he goes, do you need help? And I'm not being rude or anything, but he actually gave me that baby look. He goes, do you need help? And I'm like, I would not have came to the grocery stores by myself if I couldn't load my groceries back into my car.
Earning my own money. Love being able to earn, go there every day and go, I did this work, so this money's mine.
When I go out, I notice that people don't actually say to me, oh, what do you do? Because that's kind of like the first thing people used to always ask me. And I used to be quite proud to say what I did do in a previous life.
It never came across to me that people would be surprised that I worked, because it was always going to be my end result. I was always going to work because I didn't want to live on a benefit for the rest of my life or be dependent on my parents. So that was just my natural goal. But the amount of shock I get that I'm genuinely working and I'm shocked how I'm responsible for stuff, it's just very surprising to people.
Because I get asked that question less too. What do you do? And when I say I'm a teacher, they go, oh, okay.
How does that work?
Exactly.
If you're particularly in a wheelchair, I don't know about other impairments, but I know when you're in a wheelchair, if I stand in court, I'm treated with the same respect that other lawyers will treat each other. If I'm sitting down, I'm disrespected immediately.
I really want to start being a lawyer. Part-time lawyer, then a full-time lawyer, then a lawyer that's well-known. I want to be a lawyer that everyone knows, not just because I'm in a wheelchair, because I got a very good brain and because I can argue.
I just think that there's definitely a misconception out there that employers see the things that we can't do, and what they don't realise is that, you know, every day we're having to work stuff out on how to get through life. So our problem-solving skills and our ability to adapt to new things is, you know, those skills are really high.
And then I do try really hard in terms of schoolwork and that kind of stuff, because I do know that, you know, having a smarter brain will be a lot easier for me than having a stronger body.
You know, living with a sight impairment has made my life incredibly complex, and I think at times, it's been deeply challenging. There are things that have been deeply challenging. And yet, having reached this sort of stage of my life, I feel like I'm getting to a point where I'm really starting to value that richness of experience, deeply and honestly value it.
There's nothing I want to change, because I don't want to think about, you know, you think, you know, if I start thinking about, you know, why did it happen to me, and then think about what would I change now, well, you know, it just eats away at you. So I just don't want to change anything in my life.
If all those assumptions disappeared and people were more aware and more informed about everything, that'd be great.
There's a huge section of society here that then I think would be really sort of well advised to join forces, I guess, and work towards change. And I don't think we're particularly good at that.
If there was one thing that I could have, I'd love to have one hand, just one hand, on this side. Yeah.
What would you do with that hand?
I would, Curtis Palmer, I would hold a girl's hand with it.
So I have no selection process. The only thing that happens is they fall drunk in my lap, they're mine. And unfortunately, I can't see what they look like. Most people would be deterred by the red nose and grey skin. Nah, not a problem for me.
And in fact, a taxi driver just asked me the other day, you know, do blind people marry other blind people, or do they marry sighted people? And I said to him, well, they only marry sighted people if they're really desperate.
I do remember when I started dating my current girlfriend, I told some people at work, and unbeknownst to me, behind the scenes, the question of the week was whether or not Red's girlfriend is also in a wheelchair, which I found quite amusing, really, because I didn't even see it as a like, that's people are you know, are interested in this stuff.
I definitely used to have more attention before I was getting around in a wheelchair.
I definitely feel that I have to take a hell of a lot longer to get to know someone, or to, I don't know, fully be myself around a girl or whoever that you meet. Just based on the fact of you don't want to scare them off too soon type thing. You want them to actually get to know you as a person before you go ahead and I whip my legs off.
Well, the whole thing about catching... Apparently people do this thing where they catch each other's eye across a bar. Well, hello. So, I mean... So then people say, the other thing people say to me is that I'm a snob and aloof, because obviously I'm not getting anybody's eye, or we are getting somebody's eye and we have no idea. We think we're just sort of looking into the lovely distance.
Oh, yeah. And, then
and next thing you've got this...
guy who said you've been looking at me all night
long.
Well, to me, I think first comes love.
Like any other teenager, I've thought about it.
Then comes commitment.
Relationships, I've had probably 3.
Then comes marriage.
I don't have a girlfriend. Wish I did, though.
Communication's really important in any relationship. So if he wasn't able to sign, I wouldn't give him a second look.
You tend to focus a lot more on yourself, because the first thing you have to do when you've got a disability is organise yourself. So it's very much focused around your needs. And partners that aren't disabled find that quite difficult to deal with.
I think also that communication is really important. Like, if I wasn't able to sign with any depth, then the relationship wouldn't work. I mean, I'd never win any arguments.
Yeah! I mean, I think in New Zealand we've got a very limited, you know, concept of what it is to be a man, to be masculine. And I think, you know, being in a wheelchair certainly doesn't fit that very narrow prescription.
I don't have a problem with masculinity. For me, I think it was more of an image thing. I'm not afraid to admit that I'm vain, and that's, you know, regardless of me being in a chair or not. So being in a chair did add a little bit of pressure.
I remember actually going through my wardrobe just after I'd moved into a flat, and then I was about to move home, so we were doing a big clear out of my wardrobe, and my sister was helping me and sort of saying, oh, you won't need this, and you won't, and she was finding all my nice underwear. Oh, you won't need these anymore, you won't need these. And also dresses and things like that, you won't need this, you won't need that. And sort of leaving me the cotton briefs, and that was about it.
You look awesome.
I just sort of dress the way I like to dress, and I sort of make a conscious effort of not looking like I've just escaped from the institution.
We don't actually register any looks of either approval or disapproval. So we're kind of like the bizarre sociological experiment of what would you wear if you didn't know whether or not it looked good or bad. You've got to trust your own taste. You've got to actually just move with your own You know,
what feels good.
Once you learn to love yourself, everything else falls into place.
Disability and sex. Oh, how does that work?
Do they do that?
The notion that I would possibly have sex was like, some of the dialogue that I've had with my friends is like, you do that? Really?
When I had my accident, I think it was really weird. It was kind of like all of a sudden I was like, oh my God. And I remember saying to the specialist, or he was kind of like just the registrar at the hospital, he was like, and he came into the room and I just said, am I still going to be able to have sex? Am I still going to be able to have children? And he was like, I'll have to get back to you. And he ran away.
I think people don't think about sexuality of blind people. It's like they don't think that blind people can cook.
We're just living ordinary lives, no? We're just doing what every young guy kind of does.
Stinky nappy.
I still would like to have children. I'm aware that it's going to be a lot harder.
I've never really thought about kids. I mean, I've gone off and had seen a genealogist, I think they're called, yeah, to see whether or not my kids would be born like me, and apparently they won't. Apparently I was just a freak of nature.
When I was pregnant with Molly, it was my favourite thing because I've always been a bit shy about my tummy and the whole muscular dystrophy thing. It doesn't work well with my abs. And then I had this really big belly that was right out here, and it was the first time I ever wore really skin-tight dresses because I didn't have to have rolls because it's all so stretched out to here. And I felt really beautiful and really wonderful. And I'd always had things about scars and impairment and being a disabled woman and things like that. And something magical happened where I was carrying this baby, she was really, really healthy, and my body did exactly what it was supposed to do.
And some people haven't managed to accept that you are, or realise that you're still the same person. So for me, I don't know about Fujo, but like for me, a couple of friends that were really close friends have completely died away.
You know, I must admit I lost a lot of my friends, but I think that when something like this happens, you find out that a lot of your friends are actually only acquaintances.
I pretty much accepted early on that I was never going to be part of that popular clique, so I kind of just found a group of girls who I had other common interests with.
Well, when I was with my deaf friends, because there were other deaf students there, it was easy to make friends, but sometimes it was difficult making friends with the hearing students.
Relationship with my sister probably suffered quite a bit. You know, she's 6 years younger than me, and a lot of the spotlight came on me at a time when she probably needed it, and so yeah, that was probably quite tough on her as well.
Like my relationship with my dad changed because I'd always been this like really independent person, and he was like, oh, now he's got to do all these things for me, and he's got to, you know, that I become this. And I think they were really worried about the future. And
Is it pretty tough getting around? So your class is pretty tough? Interesting.
I was walking home from uni and there's a little girl jumping on the trampoline just down the road, and she saw me and started jumping and was like, "Mum, that lady has no hands!" And I was like, "Whoa, lady!" and waved and kept walking. It's the first time I've ever been called a lady. It was very odd.
Last time I went to the swimming pools, I obviously have to take off my prosthetic limb to swim. Some parents tell their children to say, "Oh, get away from her, she's got a disease, you might catch it." It's just like, hey, you can't catch this.
CP isn't in my everyday thinking. I don't think about the fact that I have CP. It doesn't, and it's only when people are shocked by something or rush over and try and do something that I realise that how far outside the frame it is.
Some people do ask you, do you have a disability? But Yeah, and I just be straight with them. I tell them, you know, I got muscular dystrophy and that kind of stuff. But yeah, people are generally quite nice about it.
When I go shopping, people always stare at me. I don't really notice anymore, but when I go shopping with like friends that aren't used to like going out with me, they really notice it.
All my friends are always noticing people staring, and apparently people stare quite a lot, and I've never noticed this.
And then there's like people that totally will actually try and avoid you, and it's quite obvious as well, because they're kind of like, oh, I don't know really what to say to this disabled person, so I'm just gonna like...
I just won't open the door for them.
Yeah, and I've actually seen people I know kind of knew like before my injury, and they've kind of like seen me but kind of thought they've got away without knowing that I've seen them.
I went into the shop in South Dunedin just before Christmas a few years ago, and the lady behind the counter said to me, "Who's cooking your Christmas meal this year?" And I said to her, "I've got 14 people coming for dinner."
But it actually made me realise that for other people, the combination of those things is also confusing or interesting, or there's something about that that does challenge people's ideas of what, a partially blind woman will be like and will look like.
Thanks, mate. Thanks, mate. Thank you.
You do get those guys that just come up behind you, oh, good on you, mate, good on you for being out. It's like, well, what should I be, just sitting in my bedroom all day? Shall I just be on the internet making friends that you never actually see or something, or just chilling out at my house and not being seen in public type thing? But
we call them backslappers.
It's just annoying. It's like, I don't need to be pitied, so don't freaking pity me. I can do everything, so why do you need to pity me, you know?
I said at the very beginning, there were two things. I could either be pitied or admired, and I certainly didn't want to be pitied.
People look at me and they think, oh, look at that poor little fella, and they say it.
You get people who say, oh, I feel really sorry for you, and it's kind of like, well, I've lived with being blind all my life. I don't feel sorry for myself, and I don't really want you to feel sorry for me either.
I look back at people that give me that kind of pitying look, and I think, gosh, you've probably got loads of stuff going on in your life that I would feel sorry for you about if I knew.
There's my plane.
I wheeled up to the check-in counter, and a woman, she just kind of looked at me and went, Pete, we've got a wheelchair here. What are you going to do? She didn't say hello.
I always say to people, if you're going to travel overseas, take a disabled person with you, because travelling anywhere is the best thing when you're disabled. You get priority.
Do quite a bit of travelling, and so coming back into the country and filling in my customs form, and they ask, oh, you've obviously been drinking quite a bit on the plane, or do you need help to get from here to the baggage terminal? And it's kind of like, dude, I've just travelled around Europe by myself. I'm sure I can get to the car park.
I need some help here, I think.
Hi, Joe, I'm here.
Hi, Joe. Hiya.
Oh, I don't know about this.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Oh, well, it's got wet.
You'll be right.
Okay.
When I went blind, I knew that I had to ask for help to gain the skills that I needed to be independent. So I've always viewed asking for help not as an act of dependence, but as a key to my independence.
If you can realise when you need help and ask for it and get it, and then you're going to be on your way and doing things independently. I think it's important to know.
There's a fear of actually also being a burden, and so you become super conscious.
I used to be really ruthlessly independent against asking for any help. Changed when I had my daughter. When you've got a wee baby and you're trying to do the shop and get in another car and it's raining, it became me not asking for help puts her in the rain longer.
I always try and take the scary out of being blind, because I feel that people are going to act in my best interest if they're not acting from a place of fear. So I'll always look at making them feel comfortable about my blindness, and that's just who I am.
Having the spinal cord injury and having a disability has taught me a lot about the world and about and made me realise that I actually have the strength of character that I didn't kind of realise I had before.
Yeah. Disability it's just one life experience, but for me it's actually turned me into someone that I like, and I would not swap it for anything else in this world.
At least be prepared to support one another and really engage, and I don't think we're particularly good at that at the moment. So I think if I could change one thing, it would just be to really, stick a piece of dynamite under our collective asses and get things moving, because I think, we could do a lot more than we are at the moment.
We had a lot of fun making that program.
It was taken from what was originally a 4-part series. You can see them all on our website.
The yellow helmet of the New Zealand Fire Service is a badge of honour that ideally would like one day to put back on. Whether or not that's in the cards is down to my rehab and the strength of will, I guess. It was a head-on, so the motorcycle then turned to the right, which in turn turned me to the right, and because the car that was driving had no front bumper, when I hit the vehicle, it tore off the right leg just below the kneecap.
"21 New Zealanders have now been chosen as finalists for the 2011 Attitude Awards. To secure your ticket to the televised black tie event, visit our website attitudepictures.com. Attitude was made with funding from New Zealand On Air.